Welcome to the Embodiment Industry Leaders Podcast with your host, Asher Rubenstein. In this podcast, I chat with some of the most gifted embodiment practitioners and some of the most successful entrepreneurs in our industry. We explore the major challenges and the new opportunities to get ahead in healing, in growth, and in business. So sit back, relax, and listen in for some really powerful wisdom on how you can become a better coach, a better facilitator, and a more successful entrepreneur.
I'd love to have a bit of a yarn with Ash, and here he is. So I'll let him take it away. Tell us a little bit about the retreat, man.
Hey guys, I'll set up a bit of an intro. Thomas, do you ever get Tom or is it just Thomas?
I get Tom all the time, and Tom or Thomas is fine, or Busby. That's my old school nickname from high school, Busby.
My boy Busby is going to be running some epic trainings at the Catalyst Retreat. Thomas has been working as a photographer and a videographer and an editor and really like a brand consultant for some of these phenomenal coaches that you've probably seen showing up on your feed with really phenomenal video and photo content. And just as a side note, he's an absolute pleasure to work with. If you get the opportunity to work with Thomas, I highly recommend it. And his partner, Emma, they're kind of like a double team duo. So I reached out to Thomas and brought him into this retreat to really answer the question of how can we make phenomenal content on our phones? Or if we're just starting out for digital photography with an SLR or a mirrorless SLR, how do we do that really easily and quickly and make it look really fucking good so that your photos pop on the feed and really pull people in? So that's what he's going to be teaching at the retreat. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. There we go. Spiel done. Thomas, do you have anything to add to the intro before we go into questions?
No, it feels like you summed it up pretty well, man. Pretty good summation. I love it.
Cool. Thomas, which fashion designers are you sporting on this fine day? What items of clothing
are you? The fashion designer, I'm supporting the old school birthday suit, and that's the designer that I resonate the most with. So let's bring some more of that in the vibes.
Nice. Now, should we get naked for this call? Is that what you're inviting?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. Or maybe not. I don't know. I kind of want to. I'm going to leave my top on for now.
It's cold in Victoria. I'm traveling down south at the moment. It's cold, it's rainy, it's miserable, and I kind of love it.
Yeah, classic Melbourne weather. Okay, cool. The first question is, how can I make my photos? So I know I need to have photos in my social media on Instagram and Facebook. And if I'm going to do it, I want to do it well. So how do I make photos that are really going to make people notice and stand out so that they stop and they engage?
Yeah. It's a good question. I guess there's heaps of different ways to
maybe making your photos pop online. And videos as well, because I do a lot of video and photo. I would say you kind of want to have one thing that's unique. And when I'm doing a photo shoot or film shoot, I always try to have a prop. And normally, traditionally, a prop is like a physical prop, like I've just got like a mouse next to me or a water bottle or something like that. But when I think about a prop, I think about just one element that makes it a bit unique to me and makes it a bit of a unique image. So that could be a necklace, that could be a type of piece of clothing, but it could also be an emotion. It could be a location. It could be a type of humor, like something that's a little bit comedic and a specific type of humor. It could be sarcasm. It could be sadness. It could like one thing, if you have one thing in your image that is unique and then that you really hone in on, I think that's how you can kind of start to tell a really interesting story, because you're not just taking random images, you're actually finding something that represents you and using that in the image. And it can be as simple as something like fire, like the four elements. You'll notice those elements get used over and over again, which is fire, water, earth, and air. And air is in smoke, like sage smoke and breezes and stuff like that. You'll notice a lot of people use the four elements because it's so captivating to everyone on a primitive level. And they can just be reused in different ways. And it's like, if you have one thing like fire, where you use fire every single time, it's like, how many ways can you use fire to tell an interesting story and have an image pop? Like, fire is just such a mystical, ancient tool that, you know, is like one of the first things that we really invented and really kind of took us into a new era. And that's like embedded in our being. So using something like fire is a really great storytelling tool, because you can capture it from so many different angles. Is it a candle? Is it a bonfire? Is it, you know, what type of flame is it? So just having one extra thing apart from you as your individual self is a really good tool, and then not overcomplicating it with too much symbolism. And that's because we're currently viewing content in vertical. So it's like we're doing this in vertical mode now. So our spacing around us, like if you look at me, there's not much space around me. So it's like, if you kind of look at my prop, my earring is probably my prop in this image. But when you go landscape, you have a lot more space around you to have more symbolism and props. But because we're dealing with social media, everything's vertical, there's a lot less space. So if you just focus on one thing and just keep experimenting with that one thing, like how many ways can you use that one comedic effect, or how many ways can you use that one natural element? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love that as an answer, because it's a really practical entry point into making the photo meaningful, like pouring meaning in a way that's not overcomplicated. So it's like, okay, what is the symbol? What is the prop? What is the meaning? And linking that meaning to the content of whatever it is that you're trying to say. I love that. Yeah, and it makes it meaningful yet accessible. That's smart. And I would add, like the more you can like really understand, because someone's going to get that piece of advice and be like, oh, well, which meaning? Like what meaning should I put? And if you're already writing a post, then you'd want to create a photo that gives the meaning of that post from a visual lens, right? You'd want to complement the post and make it relevant. So if I wrote a post today, which was quite vulnerable, and it was about emotion, and I put a sad, not sad, but vulnerable and authentic expression. I wasn't smiling in my post. I was like quite somber. So linking the emotion of the photo with what it is that you're writing, I think. And then if you're just doing an image and you don't have any external reference points for what kind of meaning to put in it, you need to understand, what are your brand pillars? Like what are the symbols or the values that you stand for as a brand, and then start to bring symbols in for each of those pillars. And this is like the basis of your marketing strategy, which we're going to go really deep on at the retreat. Getting some love.
I love that
on that one. Good to see a bit of
and
love.
I love seeing it as a symbol as well. Like, what are those symbols, those representations? That's awesome.
Yeah. It's like we're hitting the conscious with the text, the conscious mind. But with the photo, we get to start to connect with the subconscious as well. Yeah. Cool. Okay. Should we move on to the next question?
Yeah.
Okay. So what is the best place for a beginner video and photo content creator? What's the best place to put their energy to create better quality photo and video content?
And I guess we'll talk about this from someone who is wanting to create it for different purposes rather than just creating. So someone who's wanting to market, let's say.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
someone who's like kind of an influencer and wanting to market their material.
Yeah.
Repeat the question again, and I'm just going to listen from that angle.
Where do I get the biggest bang from my buck
Great.
in terms of putting effort in to up the quality
Yeah.
of my photo and videos?
Yeah. I would say, like, because we got to kind of think about what's the long-term goal as well with your marketing. And there's two options. There's the always do it yourself, and then there's the slowly developing and building a team. And the hard thing that I find with influencers or people who are marketing themselves, especially, like if you've got a product, it's so much easier. But if you're marketing yourself, I think you want to have the long-term vision of eventually having support around your marketing, whether that's a photo editor, whether that's a graphic designer, whether that's a fully fledged marketing team. You want to be slowly working towards that goal. Otherwise, like just on a fundamental business level, your business is always going to be tied to you and how much energy you can put into marketing. So setting that context, I don't think it's appropriate if you're at the beginning stage to go and hire all of these creatives to do all of the work for you. I don't think it's appropriate. And I don't think that's appropriate because you're not going to know what you're communicating. You're not going to know what you're asking for. And the first thing that I would say is I would just get really familiar with art in general, just general artistry. Because if we think about what is art and what is the purpose of art, well, it's to, on some kind of level, it's to influence people and to inspire different emotions. So if we can really understand different artistic techniques, if we can understand different tools and formulas and how different fonts do different things to the mind, how different colors do different things to the subconscious, how different shapes inspire different things. Once you can start to have just a small understanding of the artistic process and what's needed and what all of these things mean, it means that once you start onboarding like someone to do a little bit of work for you and help you out in little areas, you're going to know what to communicate. So it's like getting the biggest bang for your buck is at the beginning is to up level your own knowledge of photo, video, storytelling, marketing, artistry. So then when you start to onboard other people, you have a really good foundation to communicate from. And that's because like at the moment you don't need, like, your best bang for your buck isn't spending $5,000 on a fancy camera. Like that's not going to give you what you need, especially like I'm just using my iPhone at the moment and this is pretty good quality. I could have like my big fancy camera set up and linked up to my computer and stuff, but it's not necessary. So like up leveling your own skills and knowledge of the area is going to be a really good place, like one of the really good places to start.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I think eventually we all need to outsource most of what our business does because we just can't do everything as we grow.
Yeah.
And we definitely need to bring in experts for photography and videography. But as a starting point, you can totally do that yourself. Like I've done multiple six-figure launches without any professional videography and photography. But to develop your sensibility, to understand your style, and not just in looking at art, actually looking at other influences and being like, oh, I like the font she's using. I like I love the photography style that this person's using. I'm going to save that. I love how that person writes their copy. I love how that person does their selfies. And to just have a list of people who you can use as reference points is really powerful. So you can emulate it yourself, and then when you get a professional, you can use them as reference points.
Yeah, but you really want your own voice defined, and I think that's the beauty of doing things yourself is you're defining your own voice, and you're intuitively going, oh yeah, I like this, I don't like this, I like this, I don't like that, and that creates your own voice. And You know, like I get paid to create marketing material for people. But when someone has a really strong voice that they've honed themselves, that they've developed themselves, all I need to do is amplify that voice. And that makes
Yeah.
my job so much easier. So if you can just find your voice, hone it, define it, like just keep exploring it, then that's the best place to put your energy. That's the biggest bang for your buck that you're ever going to get, is finding your own voice.
Yeah. And in terms of actually improving your quality, like quick fixes, number one, lighting.
Yeah.
Like having your face. So I'm using a ring light and I've got a window of light in front of me. So there's quite an even, nice spread of light on my face. It's something
And you've used
anyone
it
can
well.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have a
Yeah.
vendetta against ring lights.
Why is
And
that?
it's just purely pretentiousness, really. But it's people don't know how to use them. Where I'm looking at you and I'm like, oh, you're using the ring light correctly. But people love to have a ring light and have it really close to their face and have no shadows, and like you've kind of diffused it nicely with the window light as well, and that's really nice because we've got some texture,
Cool.
we've still got some movement and some shadow going on, but people love to get a ring light and just put it as close as they can to their face, and it looks horrible. It just removes
Yeah.
personality.
Well, they're trying to remove every blemish from their face, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
we'll
yeah,
talk about that, where, how much to use apps to beautify yourself. That's
yeah,
another question I want to ask. But
yeah,
back to the lighting, like
yeah. Lighting.
just having an even spread of light on your face, not having your face like I'll turn my ring light off and you can kind of
Great.
see
Yeah, yeah.
it's a
You're a
bit
little bit washed out.
lifeless.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's not too bad. It could be worse, but with that on, it really
Mm.
just makes my face pop and show up.
Yeah.
And so you can get a cheap ring light, or you can simply just rotate yourself till
Mm.
you get the right lighting.
Yeah.
Um, and then there's a good, I don't know if you've tried the Lensa app, but Lensa has some really simple, easy presets for just editing the contrast, the lighting, and they can make
Mm.
a bland or shadowy image really pop out and stand out. And the good
Mm.
thing about Lensa is you can divide foreground and background. So you can have one preset for your foreground, one preset for your background, and it
Nice.
does a really good job. So if
Yeah.
you're wanting to just quickly up the quality, so my workflow is I'll take a photo, make sure the lighting's good, get clear on my concept, take the photo, make sure the lighting's good, and then I'll just go into Lensa, I'll do the editing. It takes like 5 minutes, and then I've got a significantly. I wonder if I can share my
Mm.
screen. No,
That would be
I
cool.
don't think I can. Facebook, take notes. But yeah, just doing that is going to significantly improve your photos.
Yeah. And I would say, yeah, when you're getting lights, like play around with them, get a nice soft light on your face. Don't have anything too close. And also play around with shadows. Shadows are really interesting. Like right now, half of my face is in shadow, half of it is kind of lit. And if you can do stuff like that, it's like the shadows is what creates personality, and the shadows is what kind of creates like that contrast between light and dark, and making everything not so light or making everything not too dark. So just getting a couple of small lights, RGB, like small ones from like GB. I think they're like 100, $200 or something like that. They got all the colors, so you can have like a nice popping color in the background if that's your vibe, like a nice pink, and then a nice warm color on your skin. And
Nice,
I'd say
nice.
with lighting, you always want to light for skin tones. You want your skin to look the
Well,
nicest. That's my theory
yeah,
anyway. When I'm doing cinematography, I'm always like, cool, let's light for the skin tones and then move out from there, because it's the skin tones that we really kind of draw our eyes to, and we want them to look as natural as possible, unless you're doing something very colorful and wild and ambitious.
got it.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. What would you do for what do you think of my background? What would you do? I've got a little plant here. It's going to be a
Plants
character.
cool. If
Yeah.
you could have like more plants, that would be rad. I would say like if you could have a bit of art in the background, that would be cool. Pop it with some things that mean something to you. There's like a favorite painter or yeah, just anything that like symbolizes and represents who you are, you put in the background, and it just subconsciously communicates to people. It's like, I'm like, yeah, you must really love nature. You've got nature all over your shirt. You've got a plant in the background. What else do you love? Who's your favorite?
Go ahead.
Yeah, who's your favorite artist? Like, have some of their art in the background.
Yeah, well, yeah, I have actually have this symbol on where are you? Yeah, this guy.
Nice. Yeah.
So that Enso, that symbol, that has a lot of meaning for me, and it definitely plays into my
Mm,
work. So I could have that photo up there, that
yeah.
painting, or even
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so you've got the corner behind your head as well, yeah? The corner of the
Yeah,
bedroom, is
it's a
that
bit of
right?
a funny shaped room. It's got a little
Ah, it's got a little
it's kind of
nook.
like a little nook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway,
Interesting.
back to the question. There's one other thing I'd recommend. If you're making video and you're recording audio,
Yeah.
this is a really quick hack. It's called the Rode Go Wireless 2. And it's got one of these, which you plug on your shirt, and then it's wireless, and you plug the other one into your phone, and you can record like very high quality audio. This should cover like pretty much as a beginner, as a starting point. Having one of these will cover all of your audio quality improvement. And if you're doing podcasts or long form video, having good quality sound is like so important, because it's what helps people stay. If you're just using your phone microphone for an hour or two, it can be a bit grating.
Mm.
So yeah, having that can be really helpful as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can get so many different variations. Like if you just want a cable that plugs straight into your phone instead of wireless. But those Rode 2s, they're really, really good. They're,
Mm,
yeah, I totally recommend them.
cool. Okay, let's move on to the next question. And this is one that, like you've mentioned, a lot of your clients ask you is how do you stay embodied um, in your photos and your videos? And as part of that question, I'd love to know when you say stay embodied, what do you actually mean by that in stay embodied?
You know, I get, this is like probably the question I get asked the most because I'm like, I create content, but I'm also in the embodiment community. And it's like, people are always like, but how do you be embodied? How do you stay embodied? How do you show up embodied? And I love this question because I think within the embodiment community, there's a lot of stigma around what is embodiment and what it means to be embodied. And it's this hyper focus on the physical being inside this kind of vessel here. And that I think we forget that when we're translating to artistry, something like photography or film or copywriting or anything like that, is when it comes to being embodied, it's like, well, where are you most embodied? So with some clients, I won't focus on a traditional form of embodiment. I'll look and be like, where are you really confident? Where do you really shine? And where are you most embodied? And the reason I say that is because have you listened to the Embodiment podcast by the Emerald, Josh?
Yeah, yeah, I love that. That was a fantastic episode.
To see
Yeah,
here how he took it from the body and he expanded it out into the head, he expanded embodiment into the
yeah.
collective, he expanded embodiment into the universal concept. And I think we kind of forget that sometime in embodiment. We think it's just about being in this physical vessel, where it's like, well, actually, some people are most embodied when they're intellectual, when they're talking. And that's where
Mm,
their highest form of embodiment is. Some people, it's in how they move, it's how they dance, it's how their state of being, the emotions that they can express in their body. Some people, it's how they write. And if it's how they write, maybe it's how they create poetry. So I'm going to focus on capturing more something a bit more poetic. And I think people have this idea of what embodiment is, and then it becomes a copy and paste, and they're just trying to be like someone else who they see as embodied, where really it's like, where are you embodied, and focusing on that. If you're really good at copywriting, that's a form of embodiment. You're embodying something and you're bringing it through your form, and then you're expressing it through words. I would say that's embodiment. The head is still a part of the body. So to kind of answer that question, it's like, yeah, where are you most confident? Highlight that. And if you've got room to improve in other areas, that's fine. But focus in on what you're most confident with first, and then expand out from there. And then staying embodied once you're in the process of capturing things is just following the threads of what's alive. So it's like, if you're doing movement, just whether it's insecurity, self-doubt, ego, whatever, just keep following those threads until they unravel.
Cool. What do you mean by that, following those threads until they unravel?
So when, because my process with capturing people, if it is movement based, let's say, for example, I'm going to start, because it's like, it's part facilitated, it's part me directing. There's like an interesting balance, because I come from like a filmmaking background and an embodiment facilitation background. Like, I blend both of them, and I'll just start with where someone's at. And if they're feeling anxious about being captured, then we'll start with the anxiety, and then we'll move through that and see where that goes next. And it might be like, oh, I'm actually really excited. Okay, what are you excited about? Oh, I'm excited about expressing this. And then we kind of just keep going down the rabbit hole of what's the most alive thing, and then keep following that until it unravels something. And it might end up in rage, it might end up in grief, it might end up in ecstasy. But if you start with what's the highest emotion that you're feeling, and then follow that down the rabbit hole, then you're going to find some really awesome content. You're going to find some really beautiful moments that are really authentic and that are really organic for the moment.
I love that approach, because it drops us into what we're really authentically thinking and feeling. It's not performative. Like, if you're feeling anxiety and you meet it and you go down the rabbit hole with it, you're actually in true connection with where you're really at. And that, I mean, to me, authenticity and embodiment are very closely linked.
Yeah.
And I'll add to that, like my view around embodiment right now, and it's always evolving, is that like, we have the idea or the identity of who we are or who we want to be. That's the idea. Let's say I want to be confident and sexy in front of the camera.
Mm-hmm.
Now the question is that idea an embodied idea? And if it's embodied, I feel sexy and confident in front of the camera. If it's disembodied, I think I am, or I tell myself that I am, or I hope to be that, but in my body, I'm not feeling confident and sexy. I'm feeling nervous or stressed out or something. So the path to embodiment is addressing the patterns that are playing out in the body and in the subconscious. It's like, okay, if I'm feeling nervous, how do I meet that? How do I work with that? How do I bring harmony and love and acceptance to this part so that it feels safe? So that's part of it, is actually addressing what's really here. And then the other part is cultivating a new blueprint, a new feeling, like learning how to be and animate archetypes that you've never animated before. And then when you've addressed the vulnerability and you're actually feeling and posturing and breathing and talking and sounding in that state that you desire, that's when it's really embodied. Yeah. And go for it.
I was just going to say, let's like ground this in practical advice for making some cool social media content, for example. Because I think we've gone very macro, and like a tip here is to like follow this path. If you're going to use this technique that we're both kind of jamming on, is I would recommend getting your phone camera or just a camera on a tripod and setting up either capturing a video or a time lapse, and then exploring those emotions somatically. And then you're capturing the process, and you're capturing every stage of the process, and you only may need to take one still out of the video or one still out of the time lapse to tell that story.
Yes.
And that's like a practical way to ground embodiment and this process in something that actually gives you a result in the end.
And this is what we'll be doing, part of what we'll be doing at the retreat. We're going to understand, like, how does our audience need us to show up, and how are we choosing to show up? What archetype, what personality, what are we symbolizing to our audience as people that's authentic and true and not dishonest? And then what's in the way? Where are we vulnerable? Where are we blocked? And how do we meet that so that we can authentically embody these qualities that we want to show up with? And then how do we feel and move through the world as those people? And we're going to be practicing it in real time with other people watching and with mentorship and support. So if you want to try that stuff, come join us, and you'll have a really big breakthrough. Hopefully.
Yeah.
Yeah, but thank you for making it grounded and practical. Yeah, just that's such a great point.
Yeah. Yeah, we can totally just stay on the macro on all this stuff, but yeah, maybe some practical tips for people would be good.
Yeah, cool. Okay, well, let's move on to the next question, and we'll see if we can make it practical. So
great.
When you know what you stand for in your brand, but you have all these different things that are parts of you that you want to share on social media, how do you, like, the woman who messaged me this, she said, I feel like I need to stay focused on brand, but there's so many parts of me I want to represent. So how do I like stay focused and clear and not confuse people, even though there's all this stuff about me that I want to share?
Cool. Man, I think this is a really big question, and it's a really big question for me right now because I've minimized a lot of stuff. Like, I just share about the stuff that I feel like is most relevant for me at the moment. However, I also will share whatever I want to share because it's my platform, it's my voice. It's not just about marketing, it's about expressing something as well, and expressing whatever it feels like I want to express at the time. And for me, it's different because my brand is like so much different than someone who would be like a facilitator or a coach or something like that. So my theory is like, I just experiment. My social media is a place for me to experiment and play and come up with new ideas to serve my clients. Like, realistically for me, like, social media is just a place to experiment and play. Like, because of the situation that I'm in, is I'm a creator for other people. I create for myself as well, but as a working thing is I create for other people. So I just love using social media to see what ideas work, what type of images work, what happens if I try this new technique, what happens if I try this new tool. Like, I just want to experiment and play. And I'm not restricted because my brand really is word of mouth more than it is online. So I would recommend that from that kind of perspective, it really depends on what stage you are in your journey. And if you're a really high peaking performance person who's got their strategy figured out, got their brand figured out, you're systemizing the process now, you're really far along the journey. Like, you want to be careful about what else you share. But if you're at the beginning stage of your journey of branding and marketing and just generally sharing online, you really don't want to care too much about those things. Like, if you've got something to say it. If it's on a controversial topic, maybe get someone to vet it first. Maybe just call in a little bit of support from people like, hey, I want to share this post. Can you read it first to make sure that I'm not going to like destroy my image or whatever and get canceled for a week? But everyone just moves on anyway after a week anyway. So, like, just full permission to share whatever you want. It's your platform, it's your voice. Like, yeah, you might be monetizing it as well, but like, it's your place to shine. It's a theater, it's a stage. You can put on whatever play you want to put on.
Yeah, I love that you've touched on just not worrying too much.
Yeah.
Like, better to post a whole lot of stuff and make some mistakes than to not post anything at all.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
I got
And
this
that's how you're going to
great
get the,
Go
go
ahead.
on. I was just going to say, it's how you get the pulse on what's really alive in the collective. It's like when you
Yeah,
post everything, it's if you can post 30 things and see what's pulsing and what people are like, oh, I really like that, then you're going to be closer and closer towards genuinely and authentically connecting with people because you're trying out, you're experimenting, you're doing new things. And in that, you might do something that took you 5 minutes to whip up and share. And it's like that gets you maybe 90% of your engagement, and you never would have known.
totally, totally. And like that whole attitude of extreme caution when you're posting, like that typically results in really bland content. Like we want to take risks. We want to do something audacious or interesting or different. We don't want to look like everyone else. So like doing something unique that's really true to you, even if it feels a bit edgy, that's probably a good thing. Like David Bowie said, if you're not creating art that makes you feel uncomfortable, you're not really an artist. And I think there's a lot of truth in that when it comes to social media, like
Mm,
trying new things and breaking through and playing with the edges. That's where that's where you break through the monotony of the feed and you stand
mm,
out and people start to really notice. The risk in social media is not really being cancelled for most of us. I don't think 99% of the people watching this, you're nowhere near audacious enough or rebellious or offensive enough. Like we've all become so numb
yeah.
to extremes that it's highly, highly unlikely that you're going to get cancelled. The real
Mm,
risk is just not getting noticed at all. So go out and take some risks and do something weird. I want to see that. We all want to see that. We want to
mm,
see
mm,
something unique. Um,
mm.
but in terms of practicalities,
Yeah.
the question of
Ground it.
like, how do I stop avoiding confusing my audience? Firstly, when you're launching, when you're selling something for a fixed period of time, you don't want to be selling a million different things. Just sell one. I tend to suggest sell one thing at a time, unless you're really crushing it at the things that you're selling. Just sell one thing at a time because selling multiple things can dilute the energy of your launch and confuse people. But in terms of brand content, content that's just there to engage with your audience and show who you are, variety is a great thing because it keeps people on their toes. If you post about the same thing every single day, people are like, oh, yeah, another marketing post. Okay, I know what this guy has to say already. So having a bit of variety is really good. Having said that, having coherence is also a good
Mm,
thing. We can have variety and coherence at the same time. The way that we have coherence is, again, knowing what your brand pillars are. Like, what are my 3 to 5 key themes or values that I represent, and consistently showing up for those values. When you're first starting out, chopping and changing them is great because you're still figuring out what you stand for. But eventually you'll start to settle and be like, this feels right for me. This resonates. This is who I am in the marketplace. And you just keep showing up with that stuff, and slowly, gradually over time, people will come to know you as that person so that when they have that need and that desire to buy, you'll be front and center of mind. So to shrink that all in, sell one thing at a time, do create variety, but also have some coherence with your brand themes, and you'll do really well.
mm. Great. Love that. Love that. I think just highlighting the point that you made about selling one thing at a time, that's great information. I
Yeah.
love that.
Yeah. So for me, my brand themes are like awesome marketing strategy, um, like embodiment, psychology, inner child, self-love, like that kind of more
Mm,
emotive piece. Comedy, like I try and make at least one out of every 4 or 5 posts funny or silly.
mm,
And
mm,
community, and
mm,
all 4 of these things are like they're who I am. So it's quite easeful to keep them going. I notice when
mm,
I just write about marketing for a week, people lose interest. But if I keep hitting the different pillars and keep creating variety, it still stays fresh and exciting and interesting. I tend to get much more engagement.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it.
Cool. Do you have anything to add on that topic, Tom?
Nah, man, I really feel like you got the major pieces of that one. That was great. I even learned a little bit.
Awesome. Awesome.
Mm,
And like I said, at Catalyst, we're going to be getting clear on all this stuff. So
mm.
if you don't know what your themes are and you need some more personalized support, you can come join us and we'll make sure you nail it. But next question, AI imaging, the hot topic of the hour. Is it
Yeah.
art? Is it not art? Is it ethical? Is it unethical? And I think I want to hear your general thoughts on it, Tom. And then I want to bring it into like a marketing, like what's its
Yeah.
place in
Okay.
marketing? Because that's really
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. Look, my general thoughts on it is at the moment, I'm really excited by the ideas of AI. I think AI generated imagery and copy and all of this stuff has the potential to really support us as creative beings on a general level. Um, and I think that there's real conversations that need to keep being had, which is why I'm glad that this question is coming up here. Firstly, I want to say, do we value the creativity or the craftsmanship more? And I think that's where AI in the conversation is like, are we valuing artists' craftsmanship of their art, or are we valuing their creativity and what they bring? Because there's so many different types of creatives and artists out there. So using AI generated imagery, it's like to some artists that's annoying because their only platform is creating portraits, let's say. However, a lot of artists are also like, there's the creative need to express something, and whatever format works for them is what works for them. And, like I'm bringing in a very, very different approach here, but it's like outdated skills. Is AI going to outdate our skills? And there's a concern around that, but also like technology is constantly removing jobs, constantly automating processes. So we have to be realistic in the fact that, yeah, we need to focus more on the creativity. We need to focus more on the problem solving rather than the craft at hand. My only concern with Lensa, and I explored it, I experimented with it, I think it's a lot of fun. My concern with it is that it's bootlegging other people's styles and using that as references to generate these images. And I would love to see some form of financial compensation for those artists whose images get used. That would be really amazing. I don't know if that's going to work or if that's possible, but that's the conversation I'm interested in having at the moment. Is like, cool, these people whose styles are being used to create these generated artworks, can they get compensated fairly? Maybe that's like a bit of a Spotify thing where they have like just a library of images or something, but I would love to see that conversation happen. And in a macro level, what's your perspective before we get into
Like,
using it for marketing?
yeah, I mean, I'm just such a practical dude. I just want to do what works for my marketing, but I'll share my views on the politics of it. Like, I think like when the printing press came out, people were outraged about how it was going to destroy like verbal history and storytelling and memory, right? And there was a huge moral outrage, and now it's ubiquitous, and no one has any issue with it. When photography came out, the art world was in outrage. It was like, well, all these artists who do photorealistic drawings are going to be out of work. We should ban this. And now it's ubiquitous, and it just is. Like, the technology is coming, and it's a bit of a waste of energy to just simply object to its existence on moral grounds. I think you've got to accept the reality that this is the new way. This is the new way. And then it's okay. If it is the new way, then how? So, the question around compensation for using artist styles, I don't know. I like the idea of that occurring, but at the same time, isn't that what all the other artists are doing anyway. Like, isn't like when you go to art school, you learn what other artists did and you borrow from them to create something new. So, are other artists now going to start compensating their inspirations financially? I don't think so. So, I suspect that there will be like an AI Spotify, the ethical AI, where artists are compensated. I could see that emerging in the way that Napster translated into Spotify. But I think it's going to be, a good probably 10 years before something like that emerges. And in the meantime, there's going to be a lot of content created very cost effectively without any financial compensation whatsoever. Am I okay with it ethically? I don't think it's ideal, but I'm still probably going to use it if I'm really honest with myself. And if I'm going to use it, then do I really have a real ethical objection? If we're still going to use it, if we're still going to praise it, if we're still going to look at it and consume it, what does the ethical objection really mean? And that's an interesting question.
I think we're too early on in its advancement to understand the ethics of it, and that's why I just think it's good that we're having conversations around it, and that it is such a hot topic that maybe we're still a few years away from making some decisions about the ethics of it, because we don't know what direction it's going in.
Yeah, we're still experiment. Yeah, I agree. We're in as a culture, we're in our infancy around even understanding the moral implications of this.
Yeah. But grounding it in marketing. And this is the one thing that AI at the current point in time, which is the end of 2022, the AI cannot do this, as I'm aware yet. They cannot tell a larger story. They cannot create a larger marketing strategy. So when using AI generated material, it's a foundation and it's a place to draw inspiration from, but it's never going to, at this point in time, you can't use AI generated art to create an overarching bigger story and to do overarching bigger marketing strategies. It's a small piece, but we can't be relying on it. I love the idea of AI generated copy because, for one, not everyone's English is great, right? And it's so inaccessible for people whose second language is English to be writing copy. And I think that it is a valuable tool for people who are at a disadvantage. It's not everyone can write and fluently express themselves with copy as other people can, people who were brought up in, English speaking households. So I'm kind of all for it in ways that help people do things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to do. But you can't have the creativity that a human being has when applying using AI generated images and copy and all of that sort of stuff and bringing it into a cohesive vision, a cohesive narrative and cohesive marketing strategy. It's not there at the moment. So if you can use AI, use it, but have a bigger strategy, focus more on the macro. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, it's a good tool with the right strategy, but it can't replace strategy yet. Yeah.
And it can't replace artistry yet either, because as an artist, you're not known for one image that you create. You're known for a plethora of creations that you do. You're known for a body of work. As an artist, you have a body of work, which is your value, which is your assets. And one painting will help tell the story of another painting because there's motifs, there's allegories, there's themes. And I think that applies directly into marketing as well.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's the tool. Yeah. So I think when we talk about AI right now, we're looking at images and text. Images, it's very good for making portraits and a single object on frame. It's very good. I'm finding there's apps you can type in, oh, I want to make a pink elephant playing poker and laughing like a maniac. You can have a single object done quite well if you put in the time, which is quite exciting. I got super excited when I first found it. I was playing with it for hours and hours. But then when I actually started trying to use it to create marketing images, I hit some walls. And the wall that I hit was, once you go past a single object and you try and lay out a scene, it's actually quite difficult to get exactly what you want. I've found, if there's a way that you figured out how to do this, message me and let me know, because I'd love to like learn from you. But like, for example, like having, you know, a person on stage being an inspiring speaker in front of an audience, giving a standing ovation, where the speaker is on the left and the audience is on the right. Like that level, it hasn't nailed yet. So I quickly find myself, I was playing with it a lot to create marketing content. I did a few images with it, and then I just let go of it because it just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. And then in terms
more
of
novelty.
Yeah. And, but what Lens is doing now with photos of people's faces, like give me 100 portraits of me in different styles and different positions. I see potential in that, like, because ideally you want to have a range of different photos that show you with different expressions. And then you can take, I've got this now, I've now got a bank of photos of me talking in front of 200 people, talking in front of 10 people, looking by myself, holding an object. I've got this bank of photographs that I've either had professionally done or taken myself, and I can pick the photo that best suits the text. And that's really powerful, having a palette of images. And AI can kind of do some of that for you. And I think that's just going to get better and better once they stop giving like 12-finger hands and 3-armed humans.
Man, I love my 12-finger hands and double arms. Those images for me were the best. They were distorted and had a bit of grit, and like the distortion made it emotional for me. Like my face was sagging, and I'm like, whoa, that's a powerful image because it's not perfect. And it's
I love how
clean.
I love how you stand for that, Tom. It's so good. Yeah.
Don't use AI to make us perfect. Use AI to make us distorted and
Well, that's really interesting, like, because it's clear that the Lensa AI images are making people look like gods or porn stars, you know, like, because all the images on the internet, like the women are just these huge, gigantic breasts, and everyone has ripped abs. And so obviously that's how people want to see themselves, or, you know, it's picking up something in our culture. And like there's a good question around the authenticity, like how do we bring back the authenticity?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting part of it. The over glamorization of the sexualization of us, I guess, would be, it's like it's overly sexualized, and that's interesting from a perspective of, I guess, the unconscious collective, and how so much of our sexuality is in the taboo, is in the shadows. And I think that surfaced in the AI art that we've seen, is like, this repression is kind of showing itself, because it doesn't need to be that way. We don't need to see women with big breasts and men with 6, 8 abs. I'm more interested in maybe seeing a really tall, lanky version of me as a tree. I would love to see that, like me mixed with Treebeard from Lord of the Rings. That would be cool.
I mean, they could make a version of it where it's like Thomas Busby, Treebeard. Thomas Busby. I think that's probably already really easy to do on AI.
I would love to do that, like a raccoon version of me or a squirrel version of me. That would be cool as well. And I guess it kind of ties into another thing that's been floating about between us, which is like using apps and stuff to make us look prettier. And I think that's a really interesting topic.
Before we pivot to that, I'll just say one more thing about the AI in terms of practical use for marketing, and that is as a text generator. Tom, you already mentioned this. Like, I wrote I wrote in the AI, write me a sales page for this product with this price point and these features. And it wrote 1,000-word sales page that was very good, like 80% of the way there. And then I could have just taken that text, changed a few phrases, and that would have been a fantastic sales page. And then I said, write me a Facebook post on this topic. I want it to be funny. I want it to be controversial, and I want it to be like generate engagement. And it did. And it was pretty good. It wasn't perfect. It was a little bit generic. And I said, make it funnier. And it made it funnier. It laced in puns. It had more emphatic language. It was amazing. And I could have totally taken that and changed a few lines. And then I asked it and then I was like, write a post in the style of this Facebook profile. And I put my Facebook profile in. And then it actually gave me a post about authenticity and marketing. So it's obviously read my Facebook profile and aggregated it and created something. You know, like I think that the potential of that already is huge, like for creating copy. I said, write 10 controversial questions that will inspire people to respond on the topic of embodied marketing. And it was like, boom, 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 boom. And 4 of the 10 were like, oh yeah, I could potentially use that. And then I said, write them again, but make them more controversial. And it rewrote them using more emphatic language and harsher polarization. It's like, it's getting really, really smart. Like if you're looking for creative inspiration on text for marketing, I would highly recommend having a play with some of these text engines.
Yeah. And it's crazy what becomes possible once you start using it, because you can put in, I know you can put in a post and it'll, like you can put in sales copy and it'll turn it into like 50 different posts. And it's like, that's just insane that you can do that. And then change those posts, make them more authentic, make them more like, you know, individualized. But then you've got like, you could just put them onto an app like Later and then schedule them over a month. And all you have to worry about is just filler content, just more authentic content, more stuff that just shows your personality.
Yeah. Yeah. The potential, like, you know, I'm really going to start utilizing this stuff more aggressively over the next few months, and find out how to find the blend between AI and human. And I'm excited to put some stuff out to like actually teach people how to do this well. I think it's going to be a huge game changer.
Definitely. Definitely.
But back to making apps to make yourself look pretty, the beautifying apps. What's your take on that?
Look, I'm going to start off this one because I think it's a sensitive topic, and I'm just going to talk about it from, I guess, my perspective as a filmmaker and photographer. So when I take photos of people, it's always like an ethics question of photo retouching and what's the appropriate amount of photo retouching. That's similar to what these apps do that make us look pretty, or filters or whatever. And when it comes down to it, especially in photos, it's about removing unnecessary details. And that's a lot of what the retouching process is removing details so we're focusing on just the most important parts. And that's been over dramatized in skin retouching and like warping people's body and changing their hair and doing all of these things. And it kind of just comes down to like, what's the need for it? Like, I don't fully like all of the face filters that Instagram has where they, you know, change the face and restructure the face and put on makeup and stuff. I think they're fun to play with every now and then. But I think about what they actually do is they help remove details as well that just clog up an image. It's like, you know, right now I've got a very chaotic background. Like I've got this little tree wire thing here, which is a bit chaotic. I got some plants over here. And if I'm going to retouch a photo, like I want to remove details that don't need to be there and just keep the symbols, just keep the shapes that need to be there to tell the story, because otherwise it's just too overwhelming for people and there's just too much stimulation in an image to say something and to be unique. So yeah, I'm kind of more like, well, does removing blemishes, does removing things with a filter add to the story, or does it subtract from the story? And that's kind of like, do you need to always be looking beautiful, or can you sometimes be looking like a hag or a rag or whatever? Like sometimes we want to look pretty, sometimes we don't need to look pretty. So I think if you're going to use it, make sure you're not using it at the same time.
Yeah, look, I think what people are thinking are, oh my God, everyone looks amazing. They're clearly photoshopping themselves. Sex sells. People buy from beautiful people. I need to make myself look more beautiful on every single post. But I feel a little bit uncomfortable about it because it's dishonest or it sets an unhealthy standard for our culture. I don't want to contribute to this unrealistic expectation culture. So what should I do it? Should I not do it? You know, I feel like that's what a lot of people are thinking.
Mm, mm. And what do you think about, what would be your advice for people navigating that topic at the moment? Because it's very predominant, very big.
Look,
everyone's doing it, nearly.
I think you've got to do what feels right for you. I don't think there's one moral stance. I think it depends on your priorities. So if your priority, the fact is that the science shows that people buy from beautiful people. People are more influenced by beautiful people. So if your top priority is to sell and the ethics is secondary or not present for you, then you would tweak your images, provided that you're not over tweaking them in a way that clearly looks doctored. Because a lot of people do that, and it's like, I can see the gaps in your filter, and this does not look right, and that can hurt trust. So a bit of subtle photo touching, if your priority is to sell, I would advise that. But if you have an ethical objection, if that doesn't sit well for you, if you want to be honest and take a stand for something different, then you wouldn't do that. And if you are going to take a stand, I would make it known. I would make that a part of your brand and say, hey, this is not how we do things. This is not okay. Like, reveal the hidden layer and really own it and lean into it. And I, like, it is a moral dilemma. And I occasionally, hide the bags under my eyes using a photo filter when I'm like looking particularly tired. And I do think, oh shit, this is like setting up an unhealthy standard, this perpetuating an unhealthy standard. And I guess each person just has to draw their own line in the sand about where they stand on it.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. I 100% agree with that. For me, it's remove as much detail that is unnecessary to telling the story, and that's my ethics in it. Is I will retouch to a certain point, but I won't go beyond that point if it's not necessary to telling the story. I just think it's a waste of my time, because it takes a lot of time to do high-end photos professionally retouched. Like, we spend hours and hours, and it's just like, I don't want to waste my time. And secondary, it's just like, yeah, I just don't think it's always necessary. But I'll remove like lighting posts, light poles and stuff in the background for sure. Like emergency signs, I don't want an emergency sign in the back of my image. Like, no.
Yeah, smart.
Yeah.
I like that. I like that as a distinction. Yeah, that's cool. Okay, hitting the hot topics, hitting
Yeah.
the challenging issues here. Um,
Mm.
I don't have any more questions to speak to. Thanks to everyone who shared your questions, by the way. I hope you got value out of the answers that we shared with you. Um, Talk a little bit about Catalyst. If you want to go deep, map out your whole marketing strategy from bottom up, or just give it a reset, give it a refresh, and then go out into the forest, have some like deep, transformative, connective experiences, like a couples retreat for you and your business, where you leave stronger and more connected than ever, and then have time dedicated, purely focused on creating content without the kitchen to distract you, with cleaning and the fridge. All the food is catered for you, the accommodation's taken care of. It's a beautiful environment. And you have mentorship. You have people like me and Tom and Lisa and Yo here to support you in real time when you need support. So it's a huge level up of your marketing skill and your marketing maturity. You're basically becoming the marketing director for your business in a big, powerful way. Emotionally, psychologically, strategically, tactically, and you're actually executing. It's like all these dimensions. If that feels alive for you, if you need that support, if your marketing's feeling a bit dry, or just needs like a revitalization, a catalyst, if you will, then come join us. Catalyst, February 5th till the 11th. It's the Sunday till the Saturday, I believe. We've got an early bird sale for another 10 days till the 23rd. You can save $500. Message me if you want more info. Okay, Catalyst pitch done.
Final thing from my perspective would be have fun. Don't take it too seriously. Try to implement as much as you can in terms of creating content and taking photos and videos, but realistically, it's crazy, it's chaotic. Enjoy it as much as you can. It's art.
Yeah,
Have fun. Make some art. Share your voice.
thanks,
Yeah.
Tom.
Mm. All right.
Thank you for the
Thanks for having me.
counterbalance. So
Yeah.
valid.
Yeah.
Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, bye guys. Hope you have a
All right.
beautiful day. Bye
You
bye.
too, bro. Bye.